Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Dark Spectrum. Movies have long since been a source of entertainment for decades, with the first movie ever made in 1888. While a majority of these movies are a work of fiction, some are based off true events that actually took place in real life. Here's five horror movies that turned out to be based off true events. Number 5. Annabelle is a 2014 American supernatural horror movie that tells the story of a doll named Annabelle. As a gift for their first child, a doctor buys a rare vintage porcelain doll to be placed in their daughter's nursery with the other collection. That same night, the couple is disturbed by a commotion happening next door at their neighbors, the Higgins, being murdered by a home invasion. When the wife called the police, she and the doctor is also attacked. When the police arrive, one man is shot dead while the female killer resorts to suicide inside the nursery while holding the doll. It was later discovered the female assailant was the Higgins' estranged daughter, Annabelle. Outside of the movie, we can't talk about the doll without mentioning the Warrens. Edward and Lorraine Warren were American paranormal investigators and authors associated with prominent cases of hauntings. According to the Warrens, a student nurse were given the doll in 1970. They said the doll behaved strangely and that a psychic told the student the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. At this point, the Warrens claimed to have been contacted after the doll began to exhibit malicious and frightening behavior. The doll was moved and placed in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut. Following Annabelle's removal from the nurse, the Warrens documented several other paranormal occurrences involving the doll. After the exorcism of the nurse's apartment, the Warrens buckled Annabelle in the back seat of the car and headed to the museum. On their way home, Lorraine claimed that the brakes either stalled or failed several times, resulting in near disastrous crashes. Considering none of this has been known to be documented, the only word we have is the Warrens themselves. Number 4. Ravenos is a 1999 Western horror film that revolves around cannibalism in 1840s California. In a remote military outpost, Captain John Boyd and his regiment embark on a rescue mission that goes horribly wrong when they are ambushed by a sadistic cannibal. Just like the other movies, Ravenos seems to get its inspiration from true events. Alfred Grenade Pecker, also known as the Colorado Cannibal, was an American prospector and self-proclaimed professional wilderness guide who confessed to cannibalism during the winter of 1874. Alfred and 5 other men embarked on a journey to travel through wine mountains of Colorado at the time of an extremely harsh winter. When Pecker was the only one to return, he claimed he had abandoned the others. Eventually, Pecker would confess the party resorted to cannibalism to stay alive after becoming lost during their travels. He later recanted this story and confessed to single-handedly living off the flesh of the 5 members. In his final telling, Pecker revealed the gruesome truth. Upon returning to the camp one morning, he discovered fellow traveler Shannon Bell had slaughtered everyone with a hatchet. The madman was roasting their flesh over a fire. When Bell rushed forward, Packers shot him twice in the belly. Then he ate Bell's body and the slain bodies of his travelers to survive. Packer's claim of self-defense failed to move the courts, and he was convicted of manslaughter. Apparently, during the gold rush in the 1800s, emergency cannibalism had become so rampant out west that the judge sought to make Packer out of an example. Number 3. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an American slasher film that released in 1974. The movie follows a group of friends who fall victim to a family of cannibals while on their way to visit an old homestead. While the movie itself is fictional, the character of Leatherface and minor story details were inspired by the crimes of murderer Ed Gein. Edward Theodore Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was an American convicted murderer and body snatcher. Gein's crimes gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered he dug up human corpses from local graveyards and made keepsakes from their bones and skins. Gein confessed to killing 3 people, including 2 women. After searching Gein's house, authorities found an array of items made from human parts. This included things like a wastebasket made of human skin and a mask made from the skin of a female head, which is eerily similar to the signature look of Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Leatherface. Number 2. The Sacrament is a 2013 American found footage horror film where 2 journalists document their co-worker's attempt to locate his sister after she joins a reclusive religious commune. His sister sends him a letter, who is a recovering drug addict, and invites him to Eden Parish, a utopian drug-free community founded by a religious leader. Once again, as the characters portrayed in the movie are fictional, the story itself is inspired by true events.
Good evening and welcome once again to A Closer Look. I'm Belva Davis. Well, the bodies of at least 409 men, women, and children, some shot to death, most apparently self-poisoned, have been found at the Guyana jungle camp of People's Temple. Among the bodies were those of the temple's fanatical founder, the Reverend Jim Jones, his wife, and at least 1 of their children. All the dead were believed to be Americans, many of them from the Bay Area. Most had reportedly stood in line to take doses of cyanide-laced Kool-Aid from a large tub.
The Jonestown Massacre occurred on November 18, 1978, when more than 900 members of an American cult called the People's Temple died in a mass suicide murder under the direction of their leader Jim Jones. The death toll exceeded 900, including some 300 who were aged 17 and under, making the incident one of the largest mass deaths in American history. While the People's Temple was active in humanitarian causes in its communities, Jones' treatment of his followers was often less than humane. Temple members was regularly humiliated, beaten, and blackmailed. Many were also coerced and brainwashed into signing over their possessions, including their homes, to the church. Number 1. The Exorcism of Emily Rose is a movie about a priest who was prosecuted for the death of a girl who was thought to be demonically possessed after he performed a church-sanctioned exorcism. The prosecuting attorney believed the girl suffered from schizophrenia and should have been medically diagnosed. Meanwhile, the attorney defending the priest agreed that Emily's condition can't be explained by science alone. Although the actors are fictional, the movie was inspired by true events. Anna Elisabeth Michel was a German woman who underwent a Catholic exorcism during the year before her death. Anna was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and received psychiatric treatment, but it wasn't effective. At the age of 20, Anna had become intolerant of religious objects and started to hear voices. Anna herself and her family became convinced she was possessed. As a result, her family appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. On July 1st, 1976, Anna died at her home. According to the autopsy, the case of death was malnutrition and dehydration due to being in a semi-starvation state for almost a year while undergoing the exorcism. The state charged the priest along with Anna's family for negligent homicide. 67 exorcism sessions lasting up to 4 hours were performed 1 to 2 times each week for over 10 months in 1975 to 1976.
Sacramentum Christum perat inde materium sanguis acquia sanctorum sanctum omnium infertor.